right, so hello. We will have practice today where we'll be kind of minimal on props. So what I'd recommend that you have are 3 blankets or 3 towels. So we'll be using our blankies a lot today. If you want any other props, of course, like pillows can replace blankets and vice versa. So, you know, get creative. To start out, though, we'll take some padding. We're going to start out belly down like we did last week, but we're going to take some padding to the low belly and the hips. So take one of your blankets, your towels, whatever you're using, place it about in the middle of your mat. And then if you have those 2 extra pieces of padding, whatever you're using, you can lay them on either side. So you're making this nice wide place of padding. And then we're going to come down to our belly. You can stack your hands underneath your forehead. Your elbows are out wide here. And just let your forehead rest. And so you might notice that you want to adjust the blanket that's underneath the belly. Like for me, I'm noticing that the edge of that's cutting a little bit too high on my ribs, so I'm just going to give it a fold over so that it's just across the band of my low belly, my hips. And that feels better. Right, so this is always kind of an experiment, and feel free to, whenever you get into a position, if you need to adjust and make some changes, feel free to do that. So we'll take a few breaths here to start to settle in and just get a sense of the body becoming heavy and the body relaxing. And sometimes it takes us, several breaths. Sometimes it takes the whole class. It can take the body and the mind in particular, varying amounts, to be able to drop in and soften. So I say that all just so that you can allow yourself to meet yourself where you are today. So as you're here, the opportunity to check in, to start to breathe a little bit deeper, even imagining that you're taking breath in through the back of the ribs, the back of the lungs. Let that be really full and expansive. If not physically, then mentally imagine that breath. We'll take about 5 more breath cycles here, just to allow the nervous system to catch up with this physical stillness. All right, so we'll build our first shape from the position we're currently in by extending the right arm forward. And so you're reaching that right arm forward, and let the palm face down. You're going to roll onto your right armpit and roll onto your right hip. And then let the right ear rest on the bicep. And then let the left leg stack on top of the right leg. And if you feel really wobbly here, which is normal, You can take that left hand in front of the chest, kind of like a little kickstand to stabilize. And then when you feel stable, you know, you might feel a little bit wobbly. That's okay. When you feel relatively stable, the left hand can start to rest on top of the left hip. And then just check in here before we get really still. Are you still more like towards the armpit, towards that right armpit? And if not, like if you're on the back of the shoulder at all, just take your left fingertips, kind of press the shoulder back so that you're resting more towards the armpit. The reason that's important is because we're tapping into the lymphatic system and all this nerve ganglia that lives underneath the armpit. And it's also, there's a high concentration of that nerve ganglia around the hips. So when we let the body be heavy here, we tap into lymphatic system, which is really good for balancing hormones. And the lymphatic system is responsible for the removal of cellular waste. It's a good thing to stimulate. So it might be kind of tender, armpit, hip might be kind of tender, and that's something to note, something to pay attention to. And also fairly normal when you are letting the body rest on the side like this. You can let your eyes close. Let the breath deepen. Let the body be heavy and relaxed. Be here for about 5 more breath cycles. Okay, so we're going to come back onto our belly, back into that first shape. You're just rolling right back onto the belly, right back onto the blanket. And before we get still, let's come up into Sphinx. So walk your elbows underneath your shoulders. From here, we'll take that left knee out to that little padding that's waiting on the side of the mat. So your blanket or your towel, whatever is there. The inner edge of the knee can be pretty tender, so that's why I offer the padding. And so our legs are going to stay like this, and you might just relax. Elbows wide, palms underneath the forehead. You might just relax into it from there. If you want to add on to this, a little bit of a spine twist, a little bit of back of shoulder opening. You would start to tuck that left arm underneath your right armpit. So I'm pressing my right palm down to lift my elbow up. And then I'm going to sweep that left arm underneath my right arm. So it's like figure 4 with the arms. Now, my right hand, I'm going to make a little fist and then rest my left cheekbone on the fist. You could also use a block there, and you could also flatten the palm and let it be. For me, that's just a little bit too much for the shoulder, so I'm just elevating the head a little bit with the fist. Okay, if that's too much on the shoulders, just tuck the left arm. You're getting just as much benefit by working with the hips and being belly down and using the breath to soften in. We'll be in this shape for about 1 minute. Nice deep belly breath here if you're able. And then still imagine that expansive quality to the back body as you breathe in. We'll breathe here for 3. Last 2. Last full breath. Okay, so if you have that figure 4 with the upper body, release that left elbow first, come back to that Sphinx-like pose, and then you can release that left leg back, lengthen out. Just pause here for a moment through center in Sphinx. Breathe in, breathe out. And we're setting up the lower half of the body first. So now we're going to take that right knee off to the side. Land the inner right knee on the padding of the blanket or whatever you're using. And then again, remember you can just soften the chest down, stack the hands, elbows can be wide. You're in a neutral position in the upper body. Or if you want to add on a little bit of that twist and that shoulder work, press down into your left hand so you can lift your left elbow, and then you're reaching your right arm all the way underneath the armpit. You make a little fist with the left hand, rest the right cheekbone down. You can also flatten the left palm or use a block underneath the side of the head. Now the work here is to soften and release any clenching, release any gripping. You practice those big full belly breaths. Imagine that expansive rib cage across the back body, the fullness of the lungs. We have about 1 minute here. Last 3 breath cycles. Keep it slow. So nice and slow. If you've tucked the right arm underneath the left, press into that left elbow, free your right elbow. And then you can release the right leg back behind you. Find that Sphinx pose. Breath in, breath out. We still need to do our left side for lymphatic stimulation. So this left arm is going to extend way far forward, maybe beyond the top of your yoga mat. And then you're kind of pushing the flesh of the left armpit shoulder behind you so that when you roll over onto your left shoulder, your left hip, you're more towards the armpit. As you're kind of balancing on your left side body, right fingertips might be in front of your chest until you feel stable. And then the right hand can relax to that right hip. See if you can release the full weight of the body into the left side. Let it be heavy. Notice where you're tender. If you're more tender in one spot than the other. Again, just information you're gathering about your body. Let your head be heavy. Try to continually release any musculature contraction. Let's be here for about 3 more breaths. Start to roll back onto your belly one last time. Elbows walk underneath the shoulders, arrive into Sphinx. Big breath in. Big breath out. From here, palms underneath the shoulders, press up to hands and knees. Do a little bit of a counter stretch. Briefly into child's pose. And if child's pose there's a lot of space in between the backs of the thighs and the calves. Take one of your blankets, fold it up, and you can kind of close the gap with that prop there. So stretch the arms forward if that feels okay. Again, I always invite you to modify. So if it feels better on neck and shoulders to bend elbows, make a little pillow with the hands. Softening into child's pose. We'll be here for about 5 breath cycles, just under a minute. Start to release out of your child's pose, palms underneath the shoulders. It might feel good to move through some cat and cow. Maybe even downward facing dog if you're feeling something a little bit more active. Okay, so from here we're going to come onto our backs and we'll set up for a variation of reclined bound angle Supta Baddha Konasana. So come on into a seat. And here I want you to still utilize your 3 blankets. So with the one that was supporting the pelvis, make it into a nice big square, and then tuck the edges of that square underneath the edges, the outer edges of the feet, so that your feet are like in this little mummy bag. Right, so the feet stay nice and warm. I talk often about parasympathetic nervous system triggers. This is one of them. Adding weight to the belly is one of them. Adding contact underneath the backs of the knees is one of them. And so too is tucking in the feet. Now with our extra props, I'm going to fold mine up so that they work for the height of my knees, tucking it underneath the outer edge. Once you got that set, so here's your bound angle, Baddha Konasana. You're going to start to roll down onto your back. If you do have an extra blanket or a pillow, you could place that underneath the back of the head, as long as it's not too high, because we're not trying to extend the neck, but rather keep it in neutral. So always looking for that sweet spot. The right amount of support underneath the head. Just a little bit goes a long way. Walk the shoulders down the back. Keep that neck nice and long. I'm placing my hands on my low belly, on my pelvis, just to create that closed circuit loop, which is another really good trigger for parasympathetic nervous system. Hands to body. You can close the eyes here. We'll take about 3 minutes in this shape, so a little bit longer of a hold. Now that the belly is facing the ceiling, imagine that the rib cage, the front of the rib cage, is very expansive, very full. Front of the lungs, same thing. And even into the belly. Big full breaths. And if you're wondering when I say we'll be here for about 5 breaths, it's just under a minute, how do we get to that minute with 5 breaths? The count is this. I silently count inhale to 5, exhale to 5. So it's an equal inhale to exhale ratio. That equals 10 seconds. You do that 5 times, that's 50 seconds. So you're about at a minute there. Five count inhale, 5 count exhale. So 1 full breath cycle takes 10 seconds. It's about 6 breaths per minute. So we've come to the end of our 3 minutes in Supta Baddha Konasana. If you're really enjoying this shape, feel free to stay in it for your Shavasana. If you'd like to, just simply extend your legs forward, lengthening it out into a more traditional corpse pose. You can do that. You could also take your legs up and over a chair for a really restorative, gentle Shavasana. I'm just starting to make a transition. If you need to move your props in any way, go ahead. I'm just going to take these blankets underneath the backs of my knees as I stretch my feet forward. We have plenty of time for Shavasana today, so start to settle in. If you want to block out the extra light, you could place something over the eyes or even turn off the light. I'm lucky that I'm wearing a hooded sweatshirt today, just tucking that over my eyes. If you have something like that, you could do the same. Just check in with your shoulders. Check in with your neck. Take a big breath in through the nose. Open the mouth, exhale the air out. Consciously releasing the back teeth and the jaw. Softening the gums and the teeth even. Let the tongue widen at the base of the mouth. Let the eyes feel like they're sinking heavily into their sockets. Even the flesh around the eyes softens. If you'd like to stay in your Shavasana, if you have the time to stay in your Shavasana, please feel free. If you need to move on with your day, just gently start to awaken the toes, the feet, the ankles, the wrists, and the fingertips. You can move the head side to side to wake up the neck. Stretch the arms up and overhead so you can breathe into the length of your body. And then on the exhale, roll off to the side, bending the knees, stacking the hips and the shoulders, fetal position. Pressing into the hands and just briefly find a comfortable upright seat. Feel the sits bones root and the spine grow tall. Join the hands together at the heart and let the chin tuck towards the chest. Just taking a moment to honor your effort and your practice. May we use the fruits of this practice to serve our highest good, to reach our highest potential. Share it with those around us that we love and who could use healing. Together we send love and healing to all sentient beings around the world that may be suffering. May they be happy. May they be free. Namaste, yogis. Okay. it for this week. Thanks for joining me.